live. Sorry about that, y'all. Almost got a late start. It has been a day. I got out of my house early enough to begin uh, the day fresh. I went and I got my new PJs. You probably can't see all of it, but nice, cute gray, silky pajamas so that I can be comfortable because we're going to be locked down for a while. And that leads into tonight's topic, the complexity of complicity, because a lot of this goes hand in hand. And it's not just racism that we need to get a tackle on if we're going to have true progress in this country. And there's just so much to talk about tonight. I'm going to put it out there that we are live, just in case, because I know there were quite a few people who were looking forward to tonight's Bonnet Chronicles. I don't know why it has me listed as playing Destiny. I'm going to have to work with Twitch and this studio on fixing that nonsense, but currently it has me listed as playing Destiny for reasons I do not know or understand. So bear with me, y'all. I'm just putting the word out that we are live so that we can get things fired up, because honestly there is a lot to talk about tonight. As you can see in some of the stuff I have highlighted, America has a real problem with not confronting ignorance. Point blank, period. Okay, we are live. Join. All right. Let's get to this seriously, though. Good evening, y'all. It has been crazy. Hey, Aim Rocks. Welcome to the chat. It has been a crazy week. It has been a crazy start to the new year, and I think a lot of people are feeling hopeless and lost, and I want to touch upon that and so many other topics tonight. But I feel like we really have to get down to the heart of complicity, because there are a lot of different factors in what complicity is and what it means. And a lot of people I've seen, especially of recent, keep using the same sentiment that I didn't know racism and hatred and bigotry was this bad. It took literally seeing people with pro Auschwitz and Holocaust shirts for some people to wake up that hatred has been prevalent in this country. And I'm going to say, like Will Ferrell's character in Anchorman, I don't believe him. I don't believe anybody who is over the age of 21, especially, that can open their mouth and say they didn't think that hatred and bigotry was this prevalent in our country. Because globally, we're not doing too well with it either. But in America, especially, for people to post on social media that they knew that racism was bad, but they didn't think it would get to this point, where have you been? What kind of privileged bubble do you live in to where you think that these people weren't around? These aren't people that just came out of the woodwork during Trump. And you will never get me to believe that nonsense. And that is where I feel a lot of people are complicit, because a lot of people are trying to play that game. Oh, Trump gave these people a bullhorn, but it doesn't mean that he created them. This was years, if not centuries, in the making of this country. And allowing the freedom of ignorance, allowing people to freely share lies and toxic stuff and not checking them. This was a culmination of not going hard on people who continuously terrorize others for not looking like them, not worshiping like them, not acting or loving in a way that they deem morally right. We allowed them to control the narrative so much that they thought they could commit open treason. And the reason is, so many of us don't like confrontation. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to get into it with people who spread things from flat earth to anti vaxxing to open transphobia. They might be famous, so we let them get away with it because they had a hard life, like Miss Rowland, who continues her crusade to be the most awful person in the current times, despite being the influential writer. It is because we lack the desire to confront ignorance that ignorance has a death grip not only on our democracy but our everyday life. It's why, as I've read in this Root article, we allow a 17-year-old kid like Kyle Rittenhouse to get a gun, murder two people, and he's out on bond. And instead of keeping low and doing what he can to provide a proper defense for himself, he is hanging out with the Proud Boys and flashing white power signs. And now new bond conditions are being requested, but why the heck is he out in the first place? And it's because we allowed these so-called good Christians to raise millions of dollars to let this murderer roam free. And once again, like I said last week, in the two Americas that we currently exist in, black children can't wear hoodies in certain neighborhoods without being gunned down. That's a reality for us. Black people are doing our best just to not be the next hashtag, while kids like Kyle Rittenhouse, because I don't know if he's 18 yet, and for me, anybody who still has teen behind their name is still a child, even though he should be tried as an adult for murder. He's out on bail. He's living his best life. He's flashing white power signs with people who just terrorized our nation's capital. This is an issue that is not going to go away with these calls for unity that the Republicans keep trying to push, and the media, who is also complicit, helping them push that link. There's just so much fuckery going around, y'all, and I'm over being nice about this stuff. And I want people to understand how we are all complicit in allowing this to continue and prevail. And one of the things that I really understand is confrontation is hard. Nobody wants to constantly get into it with their loved ones. You don't want to get into a fight over politics. You don't want to get over a fight over beliefs and the thing. But you got to understand that these people, they go unchecked all the time. They're allowed on social media to spread baseless lies. Even reporting them does nothing. Facebook is all out lying, trying to deny to say, oh, these people didn't organize their terrorist plot on Facebook. When just a few months ago, they were caught organizing the Michigan terror plot on Facebook. Social media loves to act like they have no culpability in giving these people a platform for their hate. And a lot of us, instead of staying on these social media sites to deplatform them, which should have happened sooner. Trump shouldn't have had 4 years of unchecked terror on Twitter, but he did. These QAnon groups had unchecked abilities to spread on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. It is sick how much information, or misinformation actually, is spread through social media. And I tell people all the time, I try my hardest not to retweet or amplify anything that I can't verify. And a lot of people need to take that to heart. Because the moment we spread something that we can't prove, we become as bad as those who spread those conspiracy theories. You know, I know a lot of us have common sense. A lot of us understand that vaccinations aren't a choice. You need to inoculate your kids and stop being pro-plague. You understand that racism and bigotry and hatred aren't a mental illness, as some people try to put it, but a character choice that some people embrace because they feel that the group that they're with, because it is all group thing, is comforting. It's something that they know. And instead of showing them that, hey, this is not okay, we tell them that it's their right and their freedom to be harmful, hateful bigots. And that's got to stop. And another thing that I have said several times these last few days on my social media is we are dealing with a psychopathic group that disguises itself as a political party and ideology. They keep abusing us. They keep stressing us out. They keep ingratiating themselves while making sure that we have nothing. They hold us to a different standard, and then they tell us that if we don't provide unity their way, they'll only get worse. It painfully reminds me of escaping my ex. His threats, his pleas, his I'll hurt myself if you leave, or I'll hurt you, or you'll never know what I look like if I change myself, and crazy shit like that. And so many people understand what that's like because a lot of men and women have gone through very abusive homes and very abusive relationships. We know how gaslighting works. We know how people try to turn it around and make everything they do off fault. We've heard you're making me do this. Why are you hurting our family by leaving? Why are you pushing me to be accountable for my actions? There's just so much that the GOP is trying to push. And likening the storming of our Capitol by these terrorist insurrectionists to people asking for our lives to matter, for me, shows me that they have learned nothing. And that if we don't hold them accountable, they're going to get worse because we haven't checked ignorance. We haven't called people out when they say, oh, it is my freedom to not wear a mask during a deadly global pandemic. This isn't just confined to our country, but other countries have done a way better job because people are at least willing to mask up, social distance, not form crazy riotous groups because they can't have a plague group during a plague. But we somehow in our country decided that freedom, and when I say freedom, I put the DUMB, is more important than progress. And when I say progress, I cringe sometimes because there's another fringe group to the far left that seems to think progress is only giving them free shit and only giving things the way they want or no dice. And I feel like we're sandwiched between two very loud, vocal, ignorant groups that aren't being checked enough. And we have to start doing it. Because if we don't start checking these people, if they keep running ragged and saying horrible things as fact when they're not, we can't even begin to tackle the problems that led to that insurrection on the 6th. Because we're constantly going to be dealing with these people who, they don't operate in reality. They don't want to compromise. They don't want real progress. And they don't really care if we ever get to a point where there are less have-nots than haves. Because for them, it's all about what they want. And it's all about being paid contrarians. And there's just so many people that are okay with allowing this from our media and beyond. And the thing that truly bothers me about it is how a lot of people don't see how they have a role in this. Whether you hate watch certain media outlets like MSNBC and CNN and you comment on how, oh, I can't stand Morning Joe, but you watch him every freaking day and you comment about the stupid things that he and his wife Mika say. And you get mad, but you still give them the rating to continue to push their, economic anxiety voters. Let me tell you something. If you're watching this and you are a white person that isn't above certain economic standards, if you're not middle class, if you're broke, like team broke ass as I call myself, I would be so tired of being lumped in to every MAGA moron out there, especially if you're a blue person in a rural state just struggling to stay alive. I get so sick of people not realizing that poor people, no matter what ethnicity they are, don't have the money to be getting to the Capitol. And I don't care what kind of conspiracies you want to push about funding and stuff, you're not going to see every Cletus, Jeffro, and Bubba or Lurleen out there in the Capitol. These were people with means. These were school psychologists, Olympic swimmers, business owners. These were people with more means than most of us will see in a lifetime, acting like a fool because they don't get checked. Then their racism, their bigotry, their sexism, people just think, oh, that's just the way they are. I'll just either distance myself or not say anything to them. Why rock the boat? They're not going to change. And because we don't confront these people on their attitudes and their bigotries, they love to cosplay as poor people. Oh, all Trump supporters are just poor rubes. I refuse. Because I lived, and I told my friend Helen this yesterday, I lived in one of the most rednecky parts of Florida. Right in the offshoot of Orlando. I remember it's called Old Winter Garden. And when I say redneck, these people, cinder blocks on their lawn, couple of dogs running around, drinking beer, watching NASCAR, good old boy type people. And I felt safer there than I did at 14 years old on Staten Island. Because at 14 years old on Staten Island, I had a former police detective decide he didn't want black people in his neighborhood and plotted to firebomb my family out of our house. So everybody who wants to pretend like New York is just this liberal bastion, there are plenty of parts of my former hometown that are just as full-on white supremacists, and this pandemic really put the highlight on the stupid fuckery that Staten Island gets up to. And the main reason why I moved away from there 20 years ago and never looked back. But people love to blame the good old boy redneck for all this mess and fuckery. The one guy with the bull horns or whatever, buffalo horns, he was a kid of a New York judge. Come on now. Y'all need to stop. And the shaman with his special diet needs, you think that somebody who's truly poor gives a fuck about organic diets? They're just trying to survive. But you've allowed the narrative that these are just poor rubes instead of rich people cosplaying as poor rubes. And it does a disservice. And that causes more divide than you know, because people are always putting this prejudicial face on hardworking Americans who they really don't care either way. They just want to survive. And it's tiring. And it's so easy to keep a us versus them when the moment you see somebody who even looks rednecky, you automatically assume they're them. Maybe get to know a person before you stick a label. I live with that enough as a black person. I refuse to see you do that to poor people, because a lot of poor people, they're not MAGA. And I hate to really break that to you. But there's a ton of proof that these QAnon believers especially are affluent. They have the luxury of being on their devices all the time. They have the money to fly a jet from Texas to the Capitol to participate in interactions. It's just so frustrating. Yeah, dear. I know, you just want to survive. Yeah, Arby. Good Lord. And welcome to the chat, everybody. Hey, Jones. It's frustrating the way people want to pretend like they know exactly who these people are and then ignore the fact that these people were in the PTA meetings with you. These people are in your almost all white neighborhoods. These people are the kind of people that have never hid their beliefs from you. You just chose not to challenge them on it because for you it was norm. And until people start really confronting the things that they allow to go on in their circles, especially, we're not going to get anywhere. Because, for real, Quananon grew amongst everyday households. Typical soccer moms are spreading this stuff. And these people worked in doctors' offices, they work as lawyers, they are in the public every day while spreading conspiracy theories about our government and beyond. And this has been ongoing for years, and that is the scariest thing about this. The scariest thing is how we've allowed people the freedom to spread ignorance. And I know some people are like, well, if we don't allow people to say what they want, what makes us different from a dictatorship? I'm not saying people can't say what they want. I'm saying that we need to have harsh consequences for when the stuff they say is not only misinformation but dangerous. Because a lot of people aren't facing consequences still. They've arrested some people who thought that they could just take their picture, cause an insurrection, and not face any consequences. But there are still people every day spreading the misinformation that the election was somehow stolen or there was irregularities like Lindsey Graham is trying to pull now. There was no irregularities. Black people voted, and we used the tools that allowed us to vote via absentee ballots or mail-in ballots. And if we keep allowing them to use phrases like voter irregularities, you can bet your bottom dollar that pandemic or not, they're going to do everything they can to stop us from being able to absentee and mail-in ballot. And we should be making voting easier. But if we don't get into confrontation mode with these people who are trying to twist things, yeah, it's going to be bad, y'all. They will find ways to seize power again. Despite being the party of Trump, despite everything they're trying to do to distance themselves from him, they will twist things if we allowed it. And that is what I mean about being complicit, because they feel like they can do this. That's why they continue to use that language. Unity and voter irregularity. There was no irregularity. Every time these states investigated the so-called voting issues, they found more votes for Joe Biden. But the right don't want to talk about that. They want to put out that narrative that stuff was found that was wrong so that they can pass legislation that will harm ease of access voting. We have to stay on them. Just like we have to stay on our neighbors who we may act like we really don't want to deal with them. But the moment your neighbor feels comfortable coming up to you saying something that's obviously a QAnon conspiracy, you need to shut that shit down. Whether you hurt their feelings or not, you need to let them know that you're not down with ignorance. They want to spread that ignorance, you need to let them know that that is what it is. Because a lot of people refuse to do that, and a lot of these people think that they could just say it out loud. And honestly, it goes beyond MAGA, because this kind of stuff has been going on for years. I had told Helen yesterday, she's my friend and my editor, after moving from one of the most redneck parts of Florida, I moved to a pretty suburby part of North Carolina. And to me, I experienced the worst racism in that area than I did in any other parts, because these people will smile in your face because you're one of the few token black people in their area while they say harmful, hateful, racist things. These are the soccer moms that'll smile and look you up and down like they know you're not one of us. And they, to me, are the most dangerous because they hear their bigotry reinforced in their church, in their circles. They are the ones that will smile in your face at the potluck, all the while thinking that, I would go to your lynching. And these women and men, they don't get checked at all. They believe that there's nothing wrong with their beliefs. And they're the worst kind because they have the money, they've had the education, they've had the schooling that some people struggle to get, and they still choose to be willingly hateful. Yet, nobody calls these people out. Nobody calls out the 55% of well-educated white people that were A-OK voting for this Trump administration again. No, y'all rather put it on the back of poor white people who a lot of them don't even bother to vote, honestly. And if I could be 100%, a lot of the people that I used to hang out with Florida, you would shock me if they ever even seen a voting booth. They didn't have time for that. They didn't care about that. I'd love to see that change one day because they need to understand, just like I tell my people, that your vote is your voice. But a lot of them, they can't be bothered with that shit. They're just trying to survive. And the people that do vote and the people that do engage in this group thing, they are beyond well off. We had that guy that owns that Louisiana supermarket chain down there. This man had more than enough years on this earth to know better. But he spread all those QAnon conspiracies. He spread a lot of hatred. There's still people on Twitter today. They're deactivating their accounts, but they're talking about how the accountability they're feeling for participating in that insurrection is cancel culture. And we need to press on that too, because accountability is not being canceled. Accountability is showing you that if you want to be a racist bigot who commits treason, you don't need those contracts, Kyle. It's just, it boggles my mind the way our society will find cutesy ways to downplay the way these people behave. And we have to stop allowing that. And we have to stop our media, especially, from doing that. Because there is still a double standard in the way things are reported. Somebody brought up today, and I agree with, December 25th, we had a terrorist attack in Nashville. One of the things that my boyfriend had to text me was to make sure his brother's okay because we have family in that state. So the fear of having people close to us die because some kook decided to get a bomb and blow up downtown Nashville, it's crazy that with everything that went on just these last 2 weeks, we've almost forgotten about it, and the media hasn't stayed on this. But this is what they do. And we already see blue check marks like Joy Reid, who I have a bit of respect for, but her and Eli, who follows me and I read a lot of his articles, are already starting on their whole lean of, well, we have the right to criticize this administration. And it's like, you know what? Nobody's saying that the Biden administration needs to be above reproach or critique. But y'all are irking me with you're setting already high standards for the Biden-Harris administration when you had absolutely no standards for the Trump administration whatsoever. You let that man go 4 years unchecked. Whether it was to not give honest press conferences, to tell outright lies, to both side Nazis versus peaceful protests, you did not hold that man to the fire that I know you're going to hold this administration to, and I'm already sick of it. That is why 2 years ago even, I stopped giving these people my ratings. I stopped clicking on articles shared by the New York Times. I stopped watching MSNBC and CNN because hate watching gives them the same amount of ratings as those who are A-OK with the lies they spread. And I know some people go, well, if they get low ratings, especially since MSNBC finally hired a black woman, won't that tell them that they should only cater to the right? And no, it won't. But you know what? I'm going to be tired of seeing in these next few months, which I know I'm going to see. I don't need to be Kreskin for it. Is people get mad at Morning Joe for both siding Biden's administration and Trump. People get mad at Katie Tur for bringing up any faux pas or thing that Biden can't do fast enough. People getting mad at Ali and all the rest of them. And forget about all the kooks that they're going to have on CNN that used to be with Trump's administration. I'm fully expecting half the people that can't get hired by anybody else becoming a CNN correspondent or pundit. We keep giving them our ratings, and they keep putting these people on because they know we're going to watch it, we're going to get angry, and then we're going to run to social media to bitch about it. We keep feeding them the attention that they get from this. And we have to stop. And we can't rationalize it by saying, well, if we don't pay attention, they're just going to lean this way anyway. It doesn't work that way. They understand that if people aren't viewing, if people aren't spending that money, if advertisers start to pull out, they have to change that narrative. But right now, as it goes, they're not going to, because they know people are going to hate watch them. They know people are going to play this stuff. I don't have to give them the rating. As you see, as I've got highlighted here, they put clips on. You can put clips, but it's always the same thing. They never change their standard. It's always the same panel of people debating on stuff. They almost always are white, and they're always talking about situations that really don't directly affect them. But they want to give rise to both sides. Now, I highlighted this because Whip Clyburn made such a good point about domestic terrorism and how, this country doesn't jump upon the fact that QAnon got such a grip on us. But even I realized that by highlighting MSNBC, I'm giving them the attention that they don't deserve. And I've got to break myself of even sharing their clips, because until they get that we can't keep both sides in this, that we can't keep hearing out the economic anxiety of Trump supporters, because that's bullshit, until we start calling these terrorists, and calling out conspiracy groups like QAnon, they're complicit in helping this grip, this stranglehold on our country that these bigots have. And it's just frustrating. Yeah, they do block certain words, but they only do that for certain people. Because like I said, when a person becomes a hashtag, which is almost always black people, you will get a rap sheet of the stuff they did. Even if they're a child, they somehow find ways to craft a narrative about a victim of injustice and plaster them all over the media as somebody to not sympathize with. Even George Floyd was demonized in the beginning. They tried to say that he was being detained for counterfeit money, which was never proven. They tried everything they could to justify that man's death until they realized they couldn't. Then the narrative became, look at how we have to protest. What is wrong with America? Look at this. But this is America that isn't brand new to so many of us. So many of us fear that being our uncles, our fathers, our grandfathers, our sons. It's a reality for a lot of Americans that don't have a voice still in our media. And that is why they got away with trying to accuse George Floyd of being a criminal at first. And we allow our media to keep doing this. And the stark contrasts are right there. Like I said in the beginning, you see it. Bond conditions set for a freaking murderer. I don't care how old this kid is. He murdered 2 people willingly. His ass should be in jail. But he's not. And it's because we don't hold people accountable. GoFundMe should have shut down every petition that came up to raise money for that kid's bond. But they didn't. They were not held to the same standards that they hold families just trying to raise money for coffins when their family members are killed by injustice. And that has to stop. We have the power to hold these platforms accountable for stuff like this. Because these groups should have never been able to raise that much money to let that killer out. But that's part of the complicity that keeps going on. We keep saying, oh, these Christian groups aren't dangerous. They are. Because they preach bigotry right from the pulpit. And they allow fake patriotism from their pulpit. There's nothing patriotic about what that kid did. He's a murderer. But we allowed these groups to use images of God, to use influential crowdfunding sites to raise $2 million. And these weren't just poor people donating to it. You had actors, washed up actors, who donated to this as well. And probably well-known people. Because I hate to say it, but some of your faves have been problematic. You know, a lot of people love Chris Evans. I happen to like his stint as Captain America. But he decided that he would go shake the hand of that shit weasel Ted Cruz. That traitorous Ted Cruz. You know, the one who's still acting like the sedition that happened on the 6th was no big deal. So no, I don't want to see him as Captain America anymore. I don't want to keep allowing people who coddle actual terrorists and racists to succeed. There are plenty of good actors out there that understand that you can't act like you're woke on Twitter and then shake the hands of people who are willing to completely crap on our democracy. As far as I'm concerned, he is complicit. Everybody wants to jump on Chris Pratt, but Chris Pratt let us know who he was from the get-go. I don't particularly like him either, but I know what I'm getting when I see him. You know, there are way too many people that give passes to their favorites because they might be cute or you might like their work. But the moment Chris Evans went from slamming Trump, shaking Ted Cruz's hands, he showed me the issue I have with certain people who people want to champion as being one of us fighting for actual progress. You can't fight for actual progress and break bread with bigots. You can't say you're for equality and amplify people like J.K. Rowling, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. You can't be like, oh, you know, I can't stand Jim Jordan for what he did with Ohio State. But, you know, they elected him. So, no, we've got to stop it. And we have elected officials that care about this stuff. But we have to keep on them to do their jobs, not only censoring, but ejecting these people who don't want to follow the rules, who infected members with COVID because they refuse to wear masks, the ones who won't go through metal detectors because they claim that they should have the right to pack on our Capitol floors. All of these people need to be held accountable. And if we are not pushing for that every day, for me, I feel that we are all a bit complicit in allowing this to continue to be the norm. We have the ability, and I know it's stressing, I know it's tiring, I know that there are a million other things we'd rather be doing than constantly calling out fuckery. But if we don't start by that bare minimum of calling it out and telling people this ain't right, you're not going to spread these lies, you're not going to be comfortable in your hateful ignorance around me, we're not going to get anywhere. Calling people out is the bare minimum. And we can do it, especially during this pandemic, from the safety of our homes, yet some people still refuse. You go to sites like Gab, and don't think I haven't noticed that some of you followers are on Gab of all places. I get that social media is addicting, and a lot of people like having different sites. Personally, if it ain't Twitter, I don't use it. I don't have an Instagram still. I know people have been on me to try to get that. I don't have the patience for it. I don't want a TikTok. I still keep Facebook because it's the only way I can make sure my family isn't planning any kind of like surprise visits. I don't go on that much at all. Don't remember my Pinterest. Don't even know why I even started Pinterest, to be honest. I utilize Twitter as my main social media because I know how addictive social media could be. But the amount of people who follow me that have sites, that have accounts on like Parler to claim reconnaissance and Gab to keep in touch with who? Fellow bigots? I'm sorry. I can't understand you when you go on sites like this because you give them amplification. The account numbers are driven, and they get backers from them. And I need people to understand that. When Gab was down briefly yesterday, I was excited because there's one less misinformation website out there. Yet there were people who have followed me for years that were upset behind it. And I was like, wait a minute, why the fuck do you have a Gab account? Why? What do you need it for? So it makes me question, how many Chris Evanses do we have out there? And by that, I don't mean my friend Not Cap. I mean the actual actor who will say, Black Lives Matter, but go shake the hands of an actual terrorist like Ted Cruz. So, y'all need to check that. You need to check why you need to be on certain social media sites, because, it says more about you that you feel comfortable being on sites with violent right-wing rhetoric. There are certain things in gaming that I know to avoid. Like, I used to love Reddit when I worked for a gaming magazine, until I seen just how vile some of the stuff people try to post on there can be. They're not as bad as 4chan, which I've avoided like the plague for years, especially dealing with Gamergate types. But these circles that form in our gaming community, especially, a lot of people don't confront them. They don't confront the hate ideology that they try to push. Some guy drew a cutesy cartoon the other day talking about how we could deprogram these hateful bigots if they play D&D. Nah, I've been in D&D groups with them. They're even worse. They're the worst rules lawyers, which they don't like the rules to apply to them, but they sure love sticking it to everybody else. They say sexist and racist things, claiming to be in character. Nobody wants to play with people like that. We want to tell them that, hey, we don't want you in our groups. But some of y'all seem to think that coddling these types and inviting them in will somehow change their ways. This starts from the ground up. They are taught this stuff in their schools, who decided to teach that the Civil War was about states' rights instead of slavery. This is taught in their church, and this is condoned by society because we don't check this. We should be checking any pastor that uses their pulpit to preach bigotry and hatred for stuff that they deem morally different. We should be holding accountable anybody who works in a school that pulls that stuff. Why am I seeing videos of teachers on TikTok with Blue Lives Matter flags in a classroom? I know that I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to know that teachers weren't allowed to bring political stuff if they weren't history and government teachers in the first place, and they sure as heck weren't allowed to have stuff like that hanging in a classroom. But this is how this stuff gets normalized. And it doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, they do. That's the one thing that I noticed about social media. That certain voices get watched, just like police presence during our protests, a lot harder than these people who are openly planning horrible stuff. These cats can openly recruit for fellow terrorists on sites like Facebook and get no kind of flack for it until something goes down. But let somebody talk about how racism affects us, how these people are spreading lies, or let us call these people out in a way that they say is a bit too harsh. We get banned, our accounts get suspended, and it's really frustrating because especially Jack allowed Trump to not only spread harmful stuff that did harm to our economy and our stock market, but to fellow American people unchecked for 4 years and before that, because a lot of his birthership was spread on Twitter. And I feel like if we don't start really pushing these companies in ways we know how to, because we know how to go to advertisers and say, hey, if you keep supporting this, You're not getting my money. We have to stick to this. It's the only way we're going to get past these entitled, selfish people. It's the only way we move past complicity. But I feel like saying this really puts a spotlight on me that frustrates me as well, because especially these last 4 years, there's been a complex called the Sheero complex or the hero complex that I really want people to stop doing. I'm not saying anything that's super profound. I'm not saying anything that's so sage-like, and I'm hardly the only black person or person of color saying these things. But you amplify us like we're heroes or the help or woke whisperers, and it's frustrating. I don't want you to idolize me. I'm a human being. For everything that I say that you might agree with, I'm guaranteed that I might say something that's going to be fucked up too, because I'm a human being and I'm flawed, and it frustrates me to no end when people try to put me on a pedestal for just being decent. Everybody should strive to be a bit more decent. Everybody should strive to be a bit better. And we don't need you saying, oh, I want to be like you, black woman. Just be better. Be yourself, but be better. Learn what you've condoned over time, bigotry wise, and realize that's not okay, and do your part to get away with it. I know that the person I am today is far better than the person I was 20 years ago, because I was raised in a conservative family. I heard all the horrible things, not just about white people, but my own people, because people don't understand that when you have a little bit more, a lot of people choose to look down on those who don't have. And that attitude bothers me. It bothers me, the stuff that I didn't press against because I was comfortable. And it shouldn't take not being comfortable for you to speak up. But a lot of people obviously need to be at that end of the extreme. And I'm telling you right now, the 10 that was younger, especially in my 20s, was full on complicit with anti-LGBT thoughts, with laughing at transphobic jokes, with amplifying comedies and stupid ideologies, because I just wanted to be liked and accepted. But as I get older now and I realize that life is too short to be a garbage human being, I realize I have to make up for that by listening, by amplifying voices that normally get drowned out, by not taking their narrative and putting mine over it. We all have room to share, to grow, but we have to realize that there are times where we need to sit back, shut up, and not add to the conversation at all. And that's what I learned trying to be there for my friends who are trans, who are LGBT, is to not, boy, are you kidding me? No transformer jokes. But seriously, to be, and I don't want to use the word ally because I feel like that word diminishes standing up for people. But to be there for my friends and for people I don't even know, I realize that I have to own up to the stupid shit that I used to do. I have to make sure that they realize that I no longer engage or believe in, and I will not make anybody comfortable who still engages or believes in stuff like that. And you best believe I've called out family members for their traditional family bullshit because that was anti-LGBT. I had a cousin of mine that was pushing that because she didn't believe in gay adoption, and I dragged her for filth. Because I've seen the power of families who love kids, no matter if it's two fathers or two mothers. You give a child a stable household, you will have a kid that is loved and that understands stability is important. I wish more people understood that. But we've allowed this twisted moral set of values set by people who are openly bigoted for way too long, and we have to get away from that. We really do, because they keep setting the narrative. That's why they're allowed to go on these news sites and have opinion articles about how the only way we'll heal this divide is to give them the unity they want. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. We can't do that, y'all, and I refuse. It's bad enough that despite winning this national election, despite getting a 50-50 split in our Senate thanks to the Georgia runoffs, that we can't celebrate. And I know that because of the pandemic, openly going to an inauguration was definitely not on a lot of us our plans. But the fact that we can't even gratefully celebrate and rightfully celebrate this victory because the feelings are still hurt from these people who want to deny facts frustrates me. But I'm not going to let them steal my joy. On the 20th, I'm going to have celebration music. I'm going to make good food. I'm going to watch the inauguration from my home. I'm going to have a watch party. I don't know whether I'll Zoom it or not because I really don't want to deal with a lot of people. I know a lot of people don't believe this about me because of the way I come across in these vlogs and on the internet, but I'm an introvert. You can ask Axiom. I like my house quiet. I am a very secular, quiet person outside social media. And a lot of people, when they meet me, they're shocked by the vast difference in my demeanor and my attitude, and especially in my home when they come and visit. Because I keep things completely quiet. Yes, food, dear. You're a mess. But we have allowed these people to steal our joy, scare us for the last 4 years. And I see why a lot of people are afraid of us having a regular inauguration beyond the pandemic. But I am so sick of not being able to smile about the fact that we won. Trump is gone in 4 days now? What is it? It's not the 16th. So 5 days technically still. But at midnight tonight, it'll be 4 days until he is gone. And we have a new administration. And despite the media revving up their nonsense of new standards, despite the left Bernie brats complaining about every single thing, and despite these right wingers who will still whine that their dummy got somehow shafted, we won. And we should be joyful. And I know it's hard because after what happened on the 6th, we don't know what these people are willing to try again. But we do know a lot of them are sitting in jail right now. A lot of them are constantly being called out by their family members and sent to the FBI. And if we keep pushing for them to be accountable for their actions, we won't have to worry about at least those types. But we also need to stay on Facebook, who likes to say that, oh, they're not using our platform to organize, to point out their hypocrisy especially. Because they did use Facebook, and they used Twitter, and they used Reddit, and they used so many other social media and forum type platforms to gather. And our FBI is real funny that they're asking for regular citizens to help them find these people when all they need to do is log on to the freaking internet and go to any popular forum site and they'll find them. You've had no problem finding supposedly members of BLM, because we are not a fully organized group of people. You don't know who's truly a member of BLM. But yet, people have been bugged. People have been falsely arrested. People have been accused of terrorism just for having any supposed ties to that group. So you can find us, but you can't find these people who took open video? Are you kidding me? That is why I say we have to hold them all accountable, especially people in positions of power. That idiot who leads the police union right now, he needs to be investigated, because I'm pretty sure he has ties to what happened to the 6th. People in the fire brigade. I used to get mad. I had a criminal justice teacher who really could not stand firemen. And I never understood it. I always thought there was something wrong with him because I have an uncle who's a fireman. And I always thought it was a noble job. But then you see the racism that a lot, especially a lot of black and female firefighters go through, and the sexism, and you realize that we've got to stop making professions noble. Yes, it's great that they help people, but some really trash ass people get into these professions and they get away with a lot of stuff because the profession is supposedly noble. It's just like that with doctors. There are doctors out there that will literally let patients die based on the color of their skin, and they get away with it because they saved the lives of the people they deem worthy. We have to stop allowing this to go on. We have to stop assigning fake patriotism to things. We have to stop allowing false nobility to things. We are all human beings, and we are capable of doing good things, and we are capable of completely fucking things up, and we need to be 100% with condemning those who F up and not using their profession as a reason not to say anything about them, especially the police. But there are so many other professions that get away with it because they're supposedly noble. And I wish that my old criminal justice teacher was still alive because I would apologize to him. I literally read him for filth back then because I thought he was being so ignorant and closed-minded to people who risk their lives battling fires. And he literally was just trying to teach me that you can't use somebody's profession as a cover for their character. And this is the kind of stuff that I wish I had known 20 years ago, but I'm glad that I realize now so that I can stop being complicit in allowing bigotry in all shapes and forms to be the norm and the standard in our country. A lot of us don't realize the little things that we do, including, I come from a military family. I have respect for most armed forces. But I realized just from the stories my grandfather and father told me that not everybody that wears that uniform wears it for a good reason. And we've got to stop treating these people like they're beyond reproach. There were murders not even a few months ago at Fort Bragg. I didn't live that far from there when I lived in North Carolina. That people are still not fully sure on who's doing it. And it's being covered up. And people aren't talking about it because we don't want to shed a bad light on our military. But if we don't start shedding the light and getting out the violent people, the white supremacists, the hate groups in general, stuff like this that happened on the 6th is going to continue to happen. It all ties into each other, y'all. I know it feels overwhelming to think about, but we have to think about it and we have to keep on it because if we don't, they're gonna plot worse. Even if they don't get away with this insurrection, if we're not constantly calling it out from the lowest to the low to the supposed highest of the high, we all need to be calling this nonsense out so that it stops being the norm. So that it becomes the abnormal instead of who we love, what we look like, and all the other superficial things that our society has always deemed abnormal while these hateful people got to decide what was normal. Whew, I'm about to wrap this up. I'd like to thank everybody who joined into the chat tonight. I will be doing these every Friday for now. Like I said, I've got to set up a poll for next week and see if there's a time slot that people might feel more comfortable in. But I really do like Friday nights. Yeah, dear, an hour has passed, and I really do appreciate everybody who joined in. I will try to get better and interacting with the chat. I just had so much that I was fired up about tonight, and once I get this way, I am just in go mode. But for real, I appreciate you all. I thank you for joining in, and I will definitely be back next week with all new topics. And if you have a topic you would like me to cover or put in to the main topic, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. If you're following me, you already know that I will respond to you as quickly as I possibly can, whether it's in DM or direct tweet. I treat people like people. These are not just follow numbers to me. So if you reach out and like, hey, I have an idea for your next Bonnet Chronicle, I'm not going to get mad at you for it. You know, I like the thought of all of us coming together and having these discussions. But I'm going to wrap it up because I'm about to go pinch Axiom. Love you though, dear. And I will see you next week. And if you are on Twitch and you're not following him, Axiom Wolf does an amazing Twitch cast. It's gaming oriented, but it's a lot of fun, and he does interact with his chat a lot better than I do. So you might want to give him a follow as well. I love you all. I love you too, dear. And I will see you next week.